They came to Bilozerka with flour, insulin, and hope. 4 white trucks rolled through the grey light toward a town that hugs the west bank of the Dnipro, close enough to the front to count the seconds between the incoming and the impact. The convoy was big-letter obvious, the kind of obvious that is supposed to save a life. UN Blue, the World Food Programme logo printed so large you could spot it from a helicopter. The whir arrived first, a thin mosquito buzz from somewhere you can't point to. Then the strikes, small, fast, mean, turning a humanitarian mission into a fire scene. 2 of the WFP trucks were hit and burned, their tarp roofs collapsing like wounded lungs. And yet, somehow, no one inside those vehicles died. You could call that luck. Aid workers just call it Tuesday. The UN says the convoy was clearly marked and on a relief run to Bilozerka. Russian drones and artillery did the rest. 2 trucks were damaged, 2 made it out. No one was killed. That sentence should feel like a miracle, not a statistic. Listen closely to the timeline. It was a frontline delivery run into Bilozerka, Kherson region. Aid pallets and medical kits for a town that's been shelled often enough to stop counting. The UN's humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine, Matthias Schmal, called the attack utterly unacceptable, reminding the world of the rules of war we all claim to remember when it's convenient. And he wasn't talking in metaphors. His team said the convoy of 4 UN-marked trucks was attacked while bringing supplies in. 2 WFP vehicles were set ablaze. The statement does not hedge on who pulled the trigger. It names the armed forces of the Russian Federation. That clarity is rare in war, and braver than it sounds. Here's another hard fact. Inside that convoy was a WHO team, riding shotgun with medicine and bandages. The WHO Director General confirmed they came under attack, delivered anyway, and got out. Scarred trucks, shaken staff, mission accomplished in the narrow, bitter definition of the word. He added that 2 WFP trucks were damaged. This isn't rumor, it's as official as it gets in the fog. The method matters. Ukrainian and UN officials say drones were involved, FPV-style kamikaze craft that hunt by camera and explode on impact. And local reports speak of artillery bracketing the escape. The kind of combined harassment that turns a relief dash into a gauntlet. The Associated Press put it bluntly, a clearly marked UN convoy attacked by Russian drones in Kherson. 2 aid trucks destroyed or damaged. No euphemisms, no incident, just what it was. Add one more thread to the tapestry. Italy's foreign minister said an Italian official was traveling with the UN team when the strike hit. He lived to tell it, but the message was obvious enough. This wasn't a warning shot. This was a proof of concept, that even a convoy with international eyes on board can be hit. Moscow can read the logos as well as the rest of us. In the immediate aftermath, the checklists kicked in. Evacuate personnel, account for everyone, kill the flames before they reach what's left of the cargo, secure the scene long enough to salvage something, anything, because in towns like Bilozerka, 1 pallet of antibiotics is the difference between a treatable wound and a funeral. Aid officials posted video from the site, their voices the steady, tired kind you hear only from people who have done this too many times. And while the UN condemned, Russian channels shared footage like a hunting trophy. That's not battlefield necessity, that's theatre, dark theatre. If you're wondering how we got here, how we arrived at the point where food convoy is a military target, don't just look at the trucks, look at the pattern. It's not just Kherson. In the same week, a Russian aerial assault hit Kharkiv's main hospital, forcing the evacuation of patients in the middle of the night. Stretchers rolling past blown-out glass while new drones circled high like vultures that learned to count. This is the winter playbook since 2022. Hit civilian infrastructure, terrorize the grid, make the interior of a country feel like the front. The goal is obvious. Make survival itself feel contingent. The law is clear, even when the sky is not. Under the Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols, humanitarian relief personnel and clearly marked aid convoys are protected. Attacking them is more than a moral collapse. It's an IHL violation that can rise to a war crime. The UN said as much, Deliberately targeting humanitarians and their assets is a gross breach of international humanitarian law. Not controversial, not disputed, illegal. Those are the rules the world pretends are carved in stone and then redraws in pencil. But rules are only as strong as the consequences that follow them. And here comes the messy part: diplomacy. Kiev's foreign minister urged UN member states to condemn the strike, to make the moral obvious again, in the language of votes and sanctions. Condemnations matter less than air defenses when drones are inbound, but they aren't nothing. Reputations can bleed too. The UN issued the condemnation. European capitals lined up on cue. And in the rolling marketplace of international will, every statement is also a signal to Moscow, to donors. So what was the target, really? On paper, a relief convoy. In practice, a narrative. You don't hit food trucks to win a hill. You hit them to make a promise to everyone watching. We can make you starve in public. Attack a hospital, scorch substations, pop an aid mission in front of cameras. This is warfare as message discipline. A campaign that marries attrition with intimidation. You can't win hearts and minds by blowing up food trucks, but you can try to freeze them. The convoy in Bilozerka was a statement written in smoke. You are not safe, and no one can protect you all the time. If that sounds like terrorism, that's because it rhymes with it. Ukraine's response is predictable but not easy. Harden the routes, decoy the road. Borrow air defense umbrellas where you can. Keep moving. It will shift doctrine in subtle ways. Aid runs that used to rely on daylight and visibility will now bank on deception and speed. The WFP may rework convoy sizes and spacing. OCHA will tinker with timing windows, coordinating with military deconfliction cells to thread the hours when Russian drones are recharging and artillery crews are swapping barrels. The WHO's presence on this run wasn't an accident. Medical aid isn't a luxury anymore. It's part of the convoy's armor. And when Europe argues about sending more interceptors, picture those 2 WFP trucks burning. It's not just cities that need Patriot batteries. It's the roads between them. For Moscow, the calculus is brutal arithmetic. Drones are cheap, headlines are free. Every strike like this one forces 100 little cancellations. Field clinics that don't open, distribution points that stay dark, pensioners who stop queuing because they don't trust a white tarp anymore. It also pressures donors. Kill enough convoys and you test the nerve of governments staring down their own budgets and elections. That's the targeting logic here. Not just the truck, but everything the truck connects. It is the weaponization of predictability. The knowledge that aid must travel a road, must stop to unload, must show its logos to survive. Russia is telling the map where to be afraid. There is also a message aimed at the professionals who do this work. Aid workers aren't naive. They inventory risk the way quartermasters count boxes. But there is a psychological tax to being singled out. The convoy was clearly marked for a reason, and that reason used to work most of the time. Markings don't just tell combatants who not to hit, they reassure civilians that someone still honors the line between war and murder. Burn a WFP truck and you punch a hole in that illusion. The UN's own language, utterly unacceptable, gross violation, is the sterile diction of a system that refuses to scream. Someone has to stay calm on the radio. Then there's the Italian thread, because wars are adhesive. An Italian official in that convoy means Rome now has skin in this specific story. Expect pointed demarches, the kind that arrive on nice paper and carry a whiff of consequences. It also means European media will keep the cameras here a little longer. And length matters. The battle for attention is as real as the artillery. Every minute the world watches is a minute the next convoy can use. Zoom out again. In 2025, the drone has become the paragraph that ends every sentence. Ukraine's skies are a crowded battlefield of fixed-wing bombs and quadcopters that cost less than a wedding ring. Russia has normalized the practice of using them to hit energy infrastructure, blackouts as strategy, and now extends that logic to humanitarian lifelines. We have entered the era where a convoy's biggest risk isn't a mine or a checkpoint. It's a GoPro with an explosive attached. Aid agencies are learning counter-drone the way they once learned convoy discipline. Jammers, route masking, dispersion, speed. Paradoxically, the more visible you are, the more you're hunted. Visibility used to buy you safety. Now it buys you targeting data. What about accountability? The UN will write the report. Investigators will catalogue fragments and trajectory. The Human Rights Monitoring Mission will log the incident in a spreadsheet that's heavier than it looks. Kyiv will press for a Security Council debate. Moscow will veto anything with teeth. Some states will slap on more sanctions. Others will tisk and move along. Meanwhile, UN logisticians will meet in a prefab somewhere and decide whether to try Bilozerka again next week. That's the part the cameras don't cover. The moral courage of showing up again. And still, amid the wreckage, the facts matter. The convoy was 4 trucks. 2 of them were WFP. 2 were damaged, burned and scarred. The vehicles were marked. The mission was humanitarian. The location was Bilozerka. No one died. The WHO team delivered and survived. These are the hard edges of the story that analysis cannot smooth. They are also the tether lines that keep us from drifting into euphemism. You can argue strategy until the batteries die on the drone. You can't argue the scorch marks. So, what does this say about where the war is going? It says the red lines are chalk now, not paint. It says the slow grind along the riverbanks has found its echo in a slow moral erosion in the rear. It says that if you can find a way to score a headline with a $500 aircraft and a GoPro, you will. And it says the defenders must become choreographers of roads, of timing, of airwaves, because the enemy is not just a battalion, it's a network. Ukraine's counter is to make the sky expensive, to force the attacker into choices. Spend drones on substations, spend them on hospitals, or spend them on food trucks. No country has enough drones to do everything forever. The trick is to make each choice cost more than the last. In Bilozerka, the smoke eventually thinned. The black skeletons of 2 WWFP trucks cooled in the wind. White logos streaked with soot, like a joke told at a funeral. The other 2 trucks kept moving. Aid workers did what they always do: count the boxes left, mark the losses, call in the next attempt. Maybe that's the only answer to a strategy that feeds on fear. Keep showing up with food. Keep writing your name so big on the side of the truck that the world has to see it, even if the people with the drones already do. In 2025, the battlefield is littered with meanings. Drones are not just weapons, they are editors, cutting the war into clips that go viral. Attacks on hospitals, power plants, and aid convoys are not just tactics, they are messages, meant to teach civilians a lesson about who owns the night. But somewhere in that same sky, there's a counter-message. It's in the convoy that still rolls, in the doctor who still evacuates a ward by phone light, in the generator that coughs back to life after a missile strike, in the aid badge that still tries to mean what it used to mean. The question that closes this chapter and opens the next is simple and cruel. How much of that meaning can survive another winter under drones? The convoy to Bilozerka will not be the last. It will be remembered for 2 burning food trucks, for the staff who got out, for a WHO team that delivered anyway, and for the day we said out loud again what should never have to be said. Food is not a target. Neither are the people bringing it. If this war has taught us anything, it's that the line between soldier and civilian, between battlefield and breadline, is only as strong as the hands willing to hold it. And right now, those hands are on a steering wheel, pointing a white truck into the grey, hoping the only buzzing they hear is the wind. Because this is the new grammar of war. Glide bombs to the city, drones to the substation, drones to the pediatric wing, drones to the UN convoy. Each strike erases a little more of the vocabulary we used to use: proportionality, deconfliction, safe passage, until there are only verbs left: strike, burn, evacuate, repair, repeat. The moral ledger is filling up with small numbers that add to something unspeakable. You can't win hearts and minds by blowing up food trucks, but you can lose your soul. And that's a loss no army can afford, no matter how many drones it buys. So we end here with a picture: the road out of Bilozerka, 1 truck scorched, another still rolling, a convoy bracketed by an invisible swarm. This is what the 2025 battlefield looks like. A camera in the sky, a signature on a truck, a law on paper, a promise in motion. The question that matters is whether the promise keeps moving faster than the drones. The answer for now is a convoy that keeps starting its engine.